You've heard the news by now. I'd imagine Bryce Young getting the fifth-year option will keep him in Carolina through 2027. 1 year, $26.5 million is the value of the option in 2027. And if you've been here with me, we've talked about it extensively. This is obviously going to happen. I didn't think they were going to do it days after the season. This is exhausting for us. It's like we're processing so much information at once here. But they did it, and I think generally Dan Morgan was impressed with the pre-snap growth. And Dan Morgan said this in his press conference, but largely this is Canales too. Impressed with the pre-snap operation, the growth there for the quarterback, but there's a lot of opportunities on the table for development. And ultimately, this decision, I think, puts the Panthers in a really good place going into the offseason. You're not in quarterback hell, per se. You have a guy who has earned a starting job. He's probably better than most of the market alternatives. Can't just go to Walmart and find a quarterback. Free agency probably isn't going to have many guys available that are instant upgrades. Morgan is open to a veteran or a guy in the draft, but who knows? Who the hell knows if they're going to be an upgrade and when? Better yet, when? You're talking about a quarterback who's still developing. And maybe Bryce Young is able to really take the next step. And it's setting the foundation for Dan Morgan this offseason in the sense that it's giving you the opportunity to go and get this team what it needs, which is talent. And I have been slow on this take, not purposely, but because I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to step back, because I think it is unjust the amount of criticism Ejiro Evero is getting. Evero is getting criticized. The Panthers have had a couple of statements. One, Dan Morgan came out in his press conference on Tuesday and said that both him and the coach are aligned in the sense that power, money, in terms of where those guys are in the hierarchy of the organization, they're aligned. So we'll read into that. We'll read into the whole press conference eventually in this program. It's a huge bunch of information that we have to break down this offseason. But both the coach and the GM have defended vehemently Evero's scheme. And my take on it before we hear from Dan Morgan and Canales is, I think a lot of what you hear from the criticizers, the critique, you hear, oh, he doesn't let JC Horn travel. Well, there's a ton of good teams that don't let their star corner travel. Tons of good teams do it. Not every corner is Darrelle Revis shadowing the number one wide receiver. And I don't even think we would be talking about this as an argument if you had a real safety back there beside Nick Scott. Meaning it was Morig and someone else. Mike Jackson has proved he can be a real bona fide number two corner in this league and play at a high level. He can go toe-to-toe with Mike Evans. Did it twice late in the season. Made big plays against big receivers. Yes, he lost his footing a couple times on that final drive where Stafford killed the Panthers in the game on Saturday. Mike Jackson is a great number two. The problem they have on defense is talent. You have Chaw Smith-Wade sitting there. He's a true nickel corner. He probably can be a pretty good player that you drafted in 2024, but now he's playing safety because Lathan Ransom is a developmental project. His cover skills aren't ready. Nick Scott, I guess he has all this power. He's calling the defense at times, but talent-wise, he's a career special teamer. You don't have true talent. We're going to talk about the pass rush in a minute, but here is Dan Morgan talking about Ejiro Evero.
Dan, how much can you share with us regarding Evero's contract extension?
Yeah, so we aligned him and Dave up, before the season, and we think highly of EJ. EJ has a really great football mind. We love his defense. It's a really aggressive defense. And, I think as we continue to add players to the defense, I think that you'll see this defense kind of come together. We made a lot of improvements on the defensive side of the ball this year, and we'll continue to get better and add pieces.
So don't take it from me. take it from Dan Morgan. They love EJ. Obviously, he said it there. They have aligned him and Dave. He's the head coach of the defense. That's the terminology they use. And for better or worse, I think having two guys who are considered the head coach, it's like you can't have two girlfriends. And in many ways, I think that analogy is true there. But it's worked for the most part, and I'm going to give Evero his fair share of critique. I think from a game plan perspective, intra-game, I thought he's done phenomenal. I think he's overachieved with the talent he's had available to him. Now, in 2024, we could say that's a different story. But in 2025, you're the 15th ranked defense in terms of points allowed. And I don't think talent-wise, you're at that level. I honestly think they don't have talent to be at the point where they got this season. They're still a step away talent-wise. And I will critique Evero. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to talk about a really good statistic that I think jumps off the page, and it should give us concern moving forward with Evero. It should give us a little bit of concern with him. But I think this season, people get on him, oh, you didn't put Princely Umanmielen in the game. You didn't have Lathan Ransom in there enough. I don't think these guys, when they were drafted, were thought to be day one starters. These weren't guys that you took with the impression that they're going to come in and just instantly contribute. And Dan Morgan, I think his answer is almost self-admitting. It's like, we understand that there's a lot of needs on this defense. We understand there's a lot that needs to be done. And yes, we sold you on this idea going into the year because we had to, that Lathan Ransom's going to be enough with Nick Scott in addition to Trevon Moehrig. We sold you on the idea that, no, we don't need to bring in a veteran like Jermaine Pratt. We're good with Trevin Wallace and Roseboom. And they sold you on how they had enough, but ultimately they knew in the back of their mind it was going to take another offseason. They had to. And then meanwhile, Evero is sitting there with Claudin Cherilus in the game, a guy who literally looked like he didn't belong on a football field in 2024. Meanwhile, in 2025, you're actually getting some meaningful play from him. Played some pretty good games in the absence of Wallace and Roseboom at points during the season. Nick Scott, another guy, just career special teamer. And I know he doesn't make a lot of plays, and at times it's really bad because he's not a starter in the first place. And you need guys. You need guys. And you can say that maybe he doesn't put the rookies in enough. I thought early in the season that was evident. Nick Scorton couldn't get on the field. And I think Nick Scorton is the day one starter defensively from the 2025 draft. Maybe you put Corey Thornton in that conversation too. Corey Thornton was undrafted, so if you really want to get into the weeds there. But they drafted Lathan Ransom. They drafted Umanmielen as developmental projects. Umanmielen, the kicker on him was he couldn't stop the run. Now, if you want to tell me, Tone, he should be in the game on third down, then I agree with you. Because I think Evero, deep down, he hates edge rushers. He just wants the guy who's 6'4", 295 pounds and sets the edge. That's the guy that he likes. Before we talk about that, though, here is Dave Canales on Evero's ability to get pressure on the quarterback, particularly on Saturday.
Soft coverage on, like an MVP front runner with so much on the line, 2 minutes left in the game.
He made a couple of nice plays, when we pressured him throughout it, and I thought we did a good job of mixing it. Ejiro had a really good plan for trying to get pressure on him early on, and then they picked up the blitzes, and he hurt us a couple of times over the middle on some third downs, and so we had to play a little bit more coverage right there.
Dave Canales saying that the coverage was the issue. I think also you could reverse engineer his answer and say he's implying the pressure was an issue. You don't have to blitz if you can get home with 4. You don't have to blitz if you can get home with 4. And the goal is the Panthers don't have to get unique and do these nickel blitzes or Evero's favorite, sending the inside linebacker, shooting him down and rushing the quarterback. You don't need to do those things if you can get home with 4 guys. If you don't need to send extra pass rushers. Now, where I will get on Evero, because this is where I think he is relatively inexperienced. He's 45 years old. He has, 3-4 years of coordinator experience now. To me, his resume, there is nothing on there that should give you any indication that he knows how to develop pass rush talent. And I think ultimately this is a guy who the best guy he's ever coached was Bradley Chubb for 8 games in 2022. Chubb had 5.5 sacks. So when you really go into the pressure and the sacks, he doesn't get a ton out of edge rushers. Brian Burns had 8 sacks here in 2023. Brian Burns had such an underwhelming season that this front office went from he's worth 2 first-round picks at the tail end of 2022, 2023 to, oh, we'll just take a second for him. And it's not that Burns had an awful season in 2023. I just don't know if he knows how to use that high-end talent. In other words, they could go and sign a really good player. They could trade for Max Crosby. They could draft a top edge talent. Does Evero really have the experience to deploy that type of player? Because you go down the list and there's really no the superstar pass rusher. You're never getting these seasons from pass rushers that are just like, wow, Micah Parsons, Max Crosby, these game-changing pass rushers. So I don't know, as you go into this offseason, how does that shape decision-making? Maybe do you bring in a star inside linebacker if you can find one over an edge rusher? Is Evero going to be able to elevate this defense from top 15, where he's overachieved with an untalented roster for the most part? Is he going to be able to elevate when he gets talent? I really think that is a question we should be asking, as ridiculous as it sounds. We'll give you all the keys. Can you ignite the engine? Can you get a top 5 defense? Because you just gave Bryce Young the 5th-year option. You didn't do that because you want to give him $55 million because you think he can elevate the team. You did that because you're Dan Morgan sitting there and you're kind of skeptical still. We went 8-9. We realize a lot of work needs to be done talent-wise. But we're going to give the quarterback a little bit of money here so we have a guy who's a placeholder, and then we're going to try to pull these strings elsewhere and build a good defense, build a good receiving core, and win with our roster. Build a system that can sustain. Well, is Evero the guy to get your defense to that point where it's elite, where it's leading the way? I don't know. That's where I have questions. But in 2025, I don't think the scheme was the problem. We stay scheming. This is The Tone. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back with more, so much more Panthers content this whole offseason.